Hello friends, Assalamu alaikum. In today's video, we will discuss how to calculate the number of solar panels you need when installing solar in your home and the required capacity of the solar inverter. If you're curious about how to calculate this load, you can do it yourself at home. We will use a sample of a typical house load to demonstrate the calculation, and based on that, we'll show how many solar panels you'll need and what inverter size will be required. The first step is to determine the load of your home. Once we know your load, we can decide the size of the inverter and the number of solar panels needed. So let's first talk about a small family home, which typically has one air conditioner and other necessary household appliances. We'll calculate the load for such a home, and then we'll discuss the required solar panels and inverter size accordingly. Now, the most important thing is to know your home's load. We'll consider the following appliances. 1. One air conditioner, typically 1.5 tons. 2. A fridge, usually a DC inverter fridge. 3. An electric iron. 4. A water pump, typically an AC pump. 5. 4 to 5 ceiling fans. 6. 10 lights LED. Let's break down the wattage of these appliances. For example, a 1.5-ton air conditioner typically uses around 2,500 watts initially. A normal-size inverter fridge will consume around 300 watts. The electric iron usually consumes around 1,000 watts, while the water pump will typically consume around 1,200 watts. Ceiling fans generally use around 80 to 100 watts, so 4 fans would use around 400 watts. Now, let's calculate the total load. The air conditioner will consume around 2,500 watts, the fridge 300 watts, and the total for lights and fans will be about 3,500 watts. If you also have devices like cameras and DVR systems running, you'll add around 150,200 watts. So your total load could be around 3,500 watts. Of course, the air conditioner's wattage will reduce once it has cooled the space, but for our calculation, we will assume it runs at full capacity for the calculation. Therefore, your home will need an inverter that can handle this load. A 3.6 kW inverter would be enough to manage this load easily. In the market, you will typically find inverters in the range of 3.6 kW, 4 kW, and even 4.2 kW. Now for the solar panels, in the market you will find solar panels ranging from 550 watts to 600 watts. For example, a 550 watt panel can be combined in pairs to make up to 1 kW. Since solar panels typically operate at 70 to 80% efficiency, a system of 550 watt panels would generate 700 to 900 watts at maximum capacity. To ensure you have enough capacity to meet your needs, it's better to opt for extra panels. For this 3.5 kW load, we would need about 6 solar panels of 550 watts each. This gives you 3,300 watts of capacity, which would be ideal for running your system during the day. If you want to have more flexibility, you could add more panels. For instance, if you use 8 panels of 550 watts, you'll get around 4,500 watts, which is more than sufficient to meet the needs of a 3.5 kW inverter. If you plan on running 2 air conditioners instead of 1, you would need to adjust accordingly. For 2 air conditioners, the required inverter would be 6 kW, and you would need 12 solar panels. If you opt for a 6 kW system, you'll also need to consider the batteries. A 6 kW inverter typically works with a 48V battery bank, which might require 4 batteries. Remember that while running appliances like the air conditioner, their wattage will decrease once the cooling is achieved, so you will have more capacity available for other appliances like lights, fans, and water pumps. This is how you can estimate the solar setup for your home. If you have any further questions, feel free to ask in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more helpful content. Thank you so much. Certainly. Here's a more detailed explanation of the video script. Muyazal reminds Ali alaikum friends. Assalamu alaikum. The video begins with a greeting. Assalamu alaikum friends, setting a friendly tone. The narrator introduces the purpose of the video, which is to explain how to calculate the number of solar panels and the size of the solar inverter needed for a home solar setup. The narrator also assures viewers that the process can be done easily with some basic understanding and gives a step-by-step guide. That's step 1, calculating the load. The first crucial step is calculating the load of the household. This is the total amount of electricity your home consumes at any given time. Understanding your home's electrical needs is critical because it will determine the type of inverter and number of solar panels you need. The narrator emphasizes the importance of understanding the load before choosing solar components. They then introduce a typical home setup for a small family, which includes common appliances. 1. Air, a common household item in hot climates. The narrator specifies a 1.5-ton AC, which is typically the size used in homes. The AC is considered a significant load since it consumes a substantial amount of electricity. 2. Fridge. A refrigerator is a vital appliance in every home. The narrator mentions using a DC inverter fridge, which consumes less power compared to conventional refrigerators. For calculation, they assume it consumes around 300 watts. 3. Electric iron, a typical appliance used for ironing clothes, with an average consumption of about 1,000 watts. 4. Water pump. A water pump is needed for water supply, especially in areas without a continuous water supply or in homes with water tanks. The narrator uses a 1,200-watt water pump for calculation purposes. 5. Ceiling fans. Most homes have ceiling fans to cool down spaces. The average ceiling fan consumes about 8.0100 watts, so for 4 fans, the total load is around 400 watts. 6. The narrator uses frequency-free lighting. This means they consume very little electricity compared to traditional bulbs. Assuming 10 lights, the total power consumption will be around 150 watts, with each light consuming 15 watts. Step 2. Total load calculation. The narrator now totals up the wattage of all these appliances to understand the total load. The main appliances are the AC, 2,500 watts, fridge, 300 watts, and the combined load of fans, lights, and other devices, 3,500 watts. The narrator includes a few extra devices, like cameras and DVR systems, which would add around 1,50200 watts to the total. The air conditioner initially draws 2,500 watts, but this will reduce once it cools down the room, as inverter ACs are more efficient. The fridge uses around 300 watts consistently. The water pump will consume about 1,200 watts when in operation, while fans consume 400 watts combined and lights use 150 watts. The total load of all appliances is calculated to be approximately 3,500 watts. This total is a guideline for what the inverter needs to support. The narrator explains that the air conditioner may not run at full wattage constantly, but it's important to consider the peak load for safety. Opinions on solar interests. Once the load is calculated, the next step is selecting the solar inverter. The inverter converts the DC electricity produced by solar panels into AC electricity that can be used to power household appliances. Based on the calculated load, 3,500 watts, the narrator suggests a 3.6 kW inverter. The inverter size should always be slightly larger than the peak load to account for any fluctuations in usage. Therefore, inverters of 3.6 kW, 4 kW,